All right. Hello, everyone. And again, thank you for joining us on our webcast today on what value can NetSuite OpenAir add to your business. My name is Joanne Casley, and I am a client development manager here at GSI. I'm very happy to introduce our presenter for today, Jimmy Morales. Jimmy is a NetSuite consultant here at GSI, and he holds a BA in organizational management. Jimmy has a background in web development and working with various ERP systems and has experience in finance and accounting, CRM, professional services automation, and reporting and workflow configuration and customization. Jimmy has been with GSI for a little over a year now, and we're very happy to have him as part of the team. Before we get started, I want to give everyone a chance to review our safe harbor statement. All right, the agenda for today is that I'm going to give you a quick overview of GSI, as well as a couple of just some quick housekeeping items before I get started with the main presentation. The webcast should last about 45 to 55 minutes and will include a Q&A session at the end if you have any follow-up questions. If you would like to submit a question during the webcast, you can do so using the GoToWebinar console window, which should be located on the right side of your screen right now. If you'd like to minimize your GoToWebinar console during the presentation, just click that red right-facing arrow that should be on the top left of the console. Now for a brief overview of GSI. We were founded in 2004, and we now have offices nationwide with a global reach. We're an Oracle Platinum partner, NetSuite partner, Salesforce SI partner, and one of only 3 Oracle Cloud certified MSP providers. GSI is also a charter member of the J.D. Edwards Global Alliance. Our consulting team is comprised of ERP and CRM experts that have an average of 15 years industry and software experience. In addition to project consulting, we provide services for project recovery, multi-system integration, security assessments, business assessments, and cloud value assessments. We also provide managed services for NetSuite, Salesforce, J.D. Edwards, and Oracle Cloud. Our flexible plans offer fractionalized resources to cover all of your system needs, from help desk to custom development and everything in between. We are full-service cloud partners for Oracle Public Cloud, AWS, Azure, and JDE Cloud 9. So in short, GSI is your one-stop shop for everything cloud. Additionally, we are a product development company that has many popular products, including Genius for advanced monitoring and performance analytics of your systems, Genesis for load and stress and regression testing for system design, validation, or expansion, G Shield, our two-factor authentication and password reset solution for J.D. Edwards, Rapid Approval, an enhanced user experience for Salesforce, making it easier to process a high volume of workflow approval requests and time and expense approvals. And finally, Rapid Reconciler, which is our Oracle validated tool for inventory in transit and received not vouchered reconciliation. Now, I'd like to turn things over to Jimmy for the main presentation.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And let me know when you get the picture of me on there, saying
Sure.
presenter.
We are good to go.
Excellent. All right, thank you. Once again, my name is Jimmy Morales. I'm one of the NetSuite consultants with GSI, and thank you all for joining. Today we are going to cover again what OpenAir is and how it can add value to your business. So to get us started, what is OpenAir? OpenAir is a professional services automation system. It enables agencies to effectively track, perform, and succeed in key metrics within their project management divisions. It provides detailed analysis of various drivers across each project, giving tactical insight to areas of opportunity and success. It uses a simple, clean interface with a high user adoption rate. So what exactly does that mean? It's a PSA tool that gives you a lot of information to help you make better decisions to manage your revenue and your costs at a project level. So one question that a lot of folks may have is, what is the difference then between OpenAir PSA and NetSuite's PSA? And in fact, if you were to just replace this logo with OpenAir with the NetSuite logo, you could probably keep all the verbiage the same and feel probably just as comfortable saying the same things about NetSuite. So where exactly does OpenAir come in, and how does it differentiate? Well, it's one of the goals of this webcast is to show how it can be used as a supplemental tool and add a lot of value to the NetSuite pieces. So let's take a high-level view of the project flow process in NetSuite. If you're already familiar with it, there may be some additional approval routing or additional customizations that you may have in the system, but typically it starts with the employee, sometimes vendors. They submit their timesheets. Those timesheets have service items affiliated with them. They can expense items on an expense report. And those transactions will then run through project rules or charge rules in NetSuite, which will then generate invoices. Those invoices affect all your accounts with those same service items and expense items, which ultimately hit your customer's balance and they can make their payments and so on. So with that project flow, once you introduce OpenAir to the mix, some items actually get absorbed entirely by OpenAir. So those processes include timesheets, project rules, and the invoices. NetSuite still can house that information, but for the most part, when you add OpenAir as a PSA tool, you're pretty much assuming that those are going to take over those tasks. That means that a lot of the core financial transactional information is still kept in NetSuite. So how does OpenAir accommodate that? Well, those transactions and those entities and payments are copied over into OpenAir, and that can be done automatically. It can be done manually. Some of those fields can be updated once it's sent over or every single time. So now OpenAir has kind of an image of what NetSuite has. It runs the processes that are still highlighted in white here: timesheets, project rules, invoices, and then it actually sends that information back over to NetSuite. And that's transactional information. Both flows of data, just to keep in mind, are one way only. So to help with the auditing history between both systems, they track them with IDs, but you're sending it one way and they're one-time copies so that there's no dual maintenance and so that you can track the history behind all items there. So one of the other goals of this webcast is to go over a use case. In this use case, we want to look at a few different requirements for a client and how OpenAir can fulfill those, and in ways that NetSuite can't necessarily do on its own, which again, it is a very powerful tool, and we don't want to detract from the value of NetSuite as a standalone piece, but where OpenAir starts to fill some of those gaps. So in this use case, say a client has three major requirements, of many I'm sure. They offer packaged services with customizable contract billing for projects. We'll go into that a little bit more into detail, but essentially what that means is you can pick and choose different prices by person, by group, and build custom packages for these projects. That can be a difficult type of thing to implement with NetSuite. They also have a high velocity time and expense entry piece with all of their employees. Not only are they doing it frequently, they're doing it often, and it needs to be done on the go. And they also need to go live quickly, so that time and expense module, they don't have a lot of time for customization there. In fact, several customizations already exist in NetSuite, and so those customizations need to be considered with the OpenAir component as well. So with those three things in mind, we want to visit the differences between NetSuite and OpenAir and how OpenAir, again, fills those gaps. So on the NetSuite side, you have what are called billing schedules and charge rules. In the billing schedule and charge rule setup, you can allow for scheduled repeating invoices of time, materials, fixed bid, standard or charge-based charges. And with those, you can define amounts, frequencies, and dates, but that's about it. And we'll get a closer look at what that appears like on a NetSuite screen. You also cannot do repeating time-based rules, and we'll touch back on that as far as the first requirement for the use case scenario, but that's a limitation of NetSuite. And it does require a lot of customization. For those of you that are familiar with NetSuite, you do get a bulk package where you can configure it and you can limit what types of fields are there or create fields, but that customization requires a lot of handling to be able to get it to get started as a PSA tool from out of the box. OpenAir, on the other hand, does allow for repeating rules. It also allows what are called assignment groups. So if you're going to assign a resource to a project, you do have to do it one at a time in NetSuite by default without any customization. Out of OpenAir, with no customization, you can immediately start throwing groups of people at projects. And you can also assign per project, per user, or per task rates and have a highly configurable rate card system without installing a completely separate module or suite app or customization as NetSuite would. They also have a robust and powerful booking module, which allows you to request resources based on their availability, and you can make projections of what your revenue is going to look like, what your cost is going to look like for all your projects across the system without having to do a whole lot of configuration there. It's also a very simple layout. Minimal customization is required, very clean design with, again, a high user adoption rate because there's minimal room for getting lost in the system. So taking a look at that first requirement, right? We said we had package services with customizable contract billing for projects. Well, let's say this client had a ticket support system where their customers can use up to 4 hours per day during a project. And different levels of support are priced differently. In fact, maybe they have different prices per user or maybe groups of users. Well, within NetSuite, you don't really have the ability to repeat this rule, right? You have 4 hours per day and you need a repetition there. And the amount definitions, as you can see from the screen, they're a little bit more tedious to manage and there's not a whole lot there out of the box. So you're going to have to do a lot of customization to start capturing that information you're looking for. So in this example, for a 1-year contract, you're actually going to need 365 rules for every single day that has a 4-hour cap. And that's just for the cap, right? If you had discounts or overages, you're looking at doubling up on those rules or tripling up on those rules just to get what you're looking for done for one project. So quite a handful to be able to do out of the box again. Looking at the second requirement, again, they had high velocity time and expense entry requirements. Now, this isn't to take away anything from NetSuite's mobile application. Again, that's a very powerful tool. However, out of the box does require quite a bit of configuration to be able to access. And one of the benefits of OpenAir is out of the box, you can immediately have all your users download it for free from the App Store, from the Google Play Store, and start throwing their timesheets out there and their expenses out there, and they're immediately processed. Another cool feature is on the mobile application, they actually have the disparity match between what's in the system and what's on your phone. So if you're, say, on an airplane and you want to load up receipts, you can actually do that from your mobile phone, and then when you land, it'll update everything in the system. So you have locally housed information, whereas NetSuite does require that mobile web application access from your phone without additional customization, of course. So out of the box, they're ready to get started with their time and material capture. And again, looking at the data flow, if you recall, we had the information is copied over and sent from OpenAir to NetSuite by timesheets, by the project rules, which is an optional transition, and of course your invoices. Header data flows through what's called OpenAir Connect. That's their branded Connect module. But not all custom fields and detail fields can be sent over immediately. So one of those requirements of the customizations already existing in NetSuite, that's a pretty heavy requirement when considering OpenAir as a supplement, because you're sending over new detailed fields for what's already been built out. And OpenAir is perfectly capable of that, but that's one of the victories we want to share as far as this success story for some takeaways as far as OpenAir integrating with NetSuite. So let's look at what the built-in NetSuite integration module is. Now you can do different integrations, whether it be through QuickBooks or they have Integration Manager for OpenAir Connect. But looking at NetSuite, they have a powerful line-by-line, field-by-field mapping option. It's actually quite simple. You choose what fields you want on the right in OpenAir, and you choose what fields you want on NetSuite. So integration is pretty easy. It just sends it over. You can, again, schedule this to be automatic. And you'll note that the direction of the data flow is just mapped out for you. You can throw custom fields on here to create additional mappings and capture just about as much information as you want by table and send it over from OpenAir to NetSuite. And you can meet unique requirements. So for example, this particular client has a custom field that they keep on their invoice that's already built out in NetSuite, right? They want to be able to capture invoice sent date. And from an AP perspective, many clients don't want to say that their due date for an invoice, for example, is 30 days from the date that you just throw on the invoice. They want it to be from the date they actually received it, so it matches their timing. So to meet that requirement, they already built it out in NetSuite for their invoice program, and they wanted to integrate that into the OpenAir system. Well, OpenAir can actually do that through advanced mapping. In advanced mapping, you can build case logic, which allows you to send information over conditionally. So a cool feature that OpenAir has, just a sidebar, you can send invoices to your clients, and those clients can actually access those invoices through a link without any special login information. So you're granting them access to their own portal, for lack of a better term, for their invoices, and you don't have to pay anything additional for that feature in OpenAir, and they can access it directly from there. So one of the cool things is you can send that information over based on when the invoice was emailed or when it was received or even when it was looked at, and NetSuite will capture that. So no additional configuration is required. So pretty cool feature. So with that said, I want to do a quick demo that runs through the time and material capture through a project and how it actually hits the invoices, and you can see that in action. And we'll pull that up now. So what we're looking at now is the initial login of OpenAir. And we're going to go straight into the account and give you a look at what OpenAir looks like. Should look pretty familiar as far as NetSuite's portals are concerned. You have the same tile format, the same kind of dashboard, same kind of menu structure here. A project will typically contain your tasks and your Gantt chart, your assignments, and what those services are that are being provided. So we have a test project here set up called e-commerce mobile app beta, right? We're building out a mobile app for one of the clients, and we charge, again, for that support functionality for the 4 hours per day. And during the implementation, we have different phases that we need to meet to be able to say that the project is done. And of course, we want to be able to put time toward the project for those 4 hours per day. So you have your typical project plan outline. You can view it differently by going to the phases and tasks module, and I can change my layout to be, say, outline. Or I can even look at a Gantt chart that says what my booking is for this particular project. So I can see my assignment Gantt chart and who's all assigned to this particular project. So I have myself already assigned here, but let's say during my test phase, I need to be able to allow myself to enter the 4 hours per day. I just go straight into my task, I add myself, and let's say I am assuming that I'm going to probably work 40 hours for the duration of that. I hit save, and I'm already loaded in there. Now, again, one of the more powerful parts and the differentiator between OpenAir and NetSuite are the billing rules. So this is one of those requirements that we talked about. You can set up time billing rules and expense billing rules, and they travel top to bottom, position by position. And as each time billing rule is met, they move on to the next one and the next one and so on until you meet all the requirements for your billing. So this is a really cool feature that you can do to configure out complex contracts like the one that we mentioned in the case scenario. So in this case scenario, again, we say we want to charge about $100 per hour for general consulting. And in that $100 per hour, we want to have a 4-hour daily cap. So I just put a time period cap of 4 hours per day, and I can have this repeat the cap daily up until the end of next year. So I now have essentially a 1-year contract where I bill $100 per hour, 4 hours per day, and I just give it a name and I associate it with the service, which is going to be affiliated with the invoice, which will ultimately hit my ledger. As soon as I hit save, I now have a rule that should capture any time submitted to the project by that task. I can even create filters to say only look at that the 4-hour per day task and exclude this billing rule from all other tasks for, say, the regular project plan that I want to build out. So from here, I can go straight in and I can, from anywhere in the system, start creating timesheets by just typing in timesheet, and I can create a new one from here. And let's say I start one at the beginning of the year, and I want to submit time for the mobile app beta project. And this is my validate test phase. And I want to put in, let's say I worked 8 hours a day for it. Right, I've already fulfilled my 4-hour obligation to this project, and I just plug in the time that I need here, and I submit what my notes are. Ticket support for ticket number 123, right? And I'm just going to copy and paste the same note because for purposes of demonstration. And I load in my time. I submit it. Now this is automatically going to run through approval process for time purposes of the demonstration, but you can set up approval routing through OpenAir entirely. And now my timesheet is ready to run through the project. So I go back over to my project and I go back over to my billing rules. And from here, again, I want to bill the $100 per hour at the 4 hours per day. So I can go over to run, and we'll capture all time for this project. Here are my 8 hours per day. However, you can see that I'm limiting the charge to $400 because my billing rule knows that it's only 4 per day, and it capped it, so I only have a $2,000 charge for the week. By hitting generate charges, I now have 5 charges totaling $2,000. I go over to my invoices, and I create a new invoice here. And I have all my charges all ready to go. It actually picks out what the latest charges that were generated in the system, and I'm ready to create my invoice. By hitting save, now I've affiliated all those service items with the task that I've associated with the project, and I have my charges and my invoice. The invoice can also flow through an approval process, and this one's going to expedite that and get it already approved. And I can actually send that invoice directly to the client from here. So I can actually type in, you can default this, but if I were to want to manually add lines in here, I can do that here. So, I can send that invoice. Now, again, part of that logic of meeting the client requirement of capturing the invoice sent date, I want to be able to get this email date, which is 2/1 at 14:27 hour military time, and have that sent over with the invoice. That's part of that integration that we talked about. So heading back over to our integration here, I can see my invoice transactions all here. And as soon as I hit run, it just sends the invoice over. We're actually not going to do that because this demo environment is not tied to the real NetSuite environment, so this won't get sent over. But the invoice, again, going back to our image here, will send the time over, the invoice over, and should we want to, we can update that project with what those rules that we just created are back over. And once that time is over, we can manage the rest of the information directly out of NetSuite, which houses the customer's history, their payments, their balance, and everything. And then again, that payment information gets sent back to OpenAir, so I can do all my reporting out of OpenAir or all my reporting out of NetSuite, and I have pretty consistent information there. So that's a pretty high level and pretty quick overview of the integration between NetSuite and OpenAir, and again, how we were able to meet those case study requirements. I'm going to hand it back over to Joanne, and we're going to open up for Q&A. And thank you all very much.
All right, Jimmy, thank you so much for a great presentation. Let me go ahead and take back control. All right. So as Jimmy said, we're going to go ahead and move on to the Q&A section of the webcast. So if you did want to submit a question and you minimized your console, just hit that red arrow again, and then you'll see the question section on your console where you can send it through. While we're waiting for those to come through, I did want to let you know that today's webcast is part of GSI's free ongoing educational webcast series. We have our upcoming webcasts listed on the screen, and you can find the entire schedule out on our website, www.getgsi.com. Also, you will be receiving an email from GSI with a link to register for our Resource Center where you can access the recording from today's webcast. Our Resource Center is a really great place to find educational content. We have recordings of all of our past webcasts, white papers, case studies, and a lot more. You can also register for that on our website as well. If you would like to sign up to receive our monthly NetSuite newsletter called the GSI Insider, you can go out to our homepage, click on the orange Newsletters tab under the NetSuite dropdown. We also have monthly newsletters for Salesforce and JD Edwards that you can sign up for the same way. There's a lot of great articles. Some of them are specifically related to NetSuite. Some of them are just general to what's going on in the world of IT today. Let's see. I don't see any questions that have been submitted. But if anybody did have a question that maybe they just didn't want to submit on air today, my contact information and Jimmy's contact information is on the screen for you now. Please feel free to email or call either one of us, and we will be more than happy to, to take your call and walk you through anything that you're looking to do. If you're, running OpenAir, if you're thinking about it, Jimmy's a great resource to kind of talk through that project. All right. Well, if nobody has any questions, then I do want to remind you that when you exit the webcast, there will be a quick survey that we ask that you follow or that you fill out. And if you do fill that out, you will be entered into a drawing to win a $25 Amazon gift card. It's about a 1-minute survey. Just lets us know what we're doing well and what we can improve on. All right, Jimmy, before we sign off, is there anything else that you would like to add?
Nope, that's all, folks.
All right, excellent. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you on another webcast in the near future.